They say there is a stretch of highway in northern Pennsylvania where your GPS stops working, and if you keep driving after dark, you'll find a motel that isn't supposed to be there. I used to think that was just another internet rumor, until I found it. My car died just after midnight somewhere along Route 47. One second I was alone on an empty road. The next the dashboard went black and the engine sputtered out. I coasted to the shoulder and sat there, trying not to panic. No cell service, no passing cars, just the steady hum of crickets and the smell of wet pine. Then I saw it, a glow through the trees. A flickering red neon sign that read, "Last Vacancy Motel." It looked like something out of the 1960s, peeling paint, broken letters, and a lot where weeds grew through the asphalt. But I was desperate, and the lights meant power, maybe a phone. The office was lit by a single lamp. Behind the counter sat a man in his late 50s, dressed in a gray uniform with no name tag. He didn't look up when I entered, just said, "One room left, cash only." I handed him a few crumpled bills and he slid me a brass key marked Sevemtar. "Breakfast at 6, he muttered. "Don't bother the other guests." I almost laughed. The place looked deserted. But when I stepped back outside, I noticed faint yellow lights glowing behind several drawn curtains. I heard the murmur of televisions, low conversations, even laughter carried on the night air. For the first time since my car broke down, I felt a strange comfort, until I got to my room. The door creaked open to a wave of stale air and the faint smell of mildew. The wallpaper was curling, and the carpet felt damp beneath my shoes. A lone moth circled the lamp above the nightstand. Still, I was grateful for warmth and light. I showered quickly, trying not to think about the faint brown stains in the tub. Then I fell into bed, exhausted. The sheets were cold, too cold. Sometime later, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside. Slow, steady, dragging. They stopped right at my door. I held my breath. The knob rattled gently, once, twice, and then a soft voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." My chest tightened. The voice was a woman's, faint and hollow, like she was standing underwater. I froze until the footsteps finally moved away, fading down the corridor. I barely slept after that. When dawn came, a thin layer of fog blanketed the parking lot. My car was still there, but something about it looked wrong. The windows were fogged from the inside. I decided to grab breakfast before figuring it out. The dining room was quiet except for a small radio playing an old jazz song. A few guests sat at the tables, a man in a trucker cap staring at nothing, an elderly couple holding hands, but never blinking, and a young woman with wet hair dripping onto her plate. The man from the front desk stood behind the counter, smiling too wide. "Coffee?" he asked. I nodded. The coffee was black and lukewarm. When I looked up again, everyone in the room was staring at me. Not subtly, just blank, unblinking faces turned in my direction. Their skin looked pale, almost translucent in the weak light. I stammered, "Is there a tow truck around here?" The clerk's smile never changed. "We don't get many travelers anymore," he said. "Road doesn't go through like it used to." Before I could ask what he meant, the young woman with the dripping hair spoke. Her voice was the same one I'd heard outside my room. "You shouldn't have stayed," she said softly. "No one leaves after the road takes them." Something cold crawled down my spine. I stood backing toward the door, but as I turned, the room seemed different, dimmer. The fog outside pressed against the windows like heavy smoke. The lights flickered. When I stepped outside, the motel looked smaller, more decayed. The neon sign was gone. In its place, a rusted frame buzzed faintly, sparking red for just a second, long enough for me to read the faint word burned into the glass. Vacancy. No, last, just vacancy. I ran to my car, heart pounding. The interior smelled damp, like wet soil. When I tried the ignition, the engine started immediately as if it had never died. I didn't look back until I reached the highway. And when I did, the motel wasn't there. Just trees. Endless trees. That was 2 years ago. Sometimes, On long drives, I'll glance at my rearview mirror and see faint lights flickering through the forest. A red glow, pulsing slow, like a heartbeat. And if I listen carefully beneath the hum of my tires, I can almost hear that same hollow voice whispering through the static of my radio. You shouldn't have stayed. They say isolation does strange things to your mind. But I wasn't alone that night. I know what I heard. I just wish I hadn't gone near the window. I was driving across the state for a job interview, somewhere past midnight, when fatigue started to win. The highway had gone quiet miles ago, just black forest, the faint hum of tires, and the occasional road sign half swallowed by weeds. I spotted a flickering neon sign through the trees. Mountain View Motel, vacancy. The place looked like it hadn't seen a guest in years. The parking lot was cracked, the vending machine half buried in vines, and the office light buzzed like it was running on its last breath. Inside, a man stood behind the counter, thin, polite smile, eyes that didn't quite blink enough. Only one room left, he said. Room 23. He slid me a key attached to a faded green tag. As I turned to leave, his tone shifted, flat, rehearsed. Don't open the curtains after midnight, he said. I laughed a little, assuming it was a joke. He didn't. I mean it, he added, his voice dropping. No matter what you hear. Room 23 was at the far end of the hall, where the carpet smell turned from mildew to something sweet and stale like rotting flowers. The room itself wasn't terrible, just dated. Faded wallpaper, a single queen bed, and a window overlooking what looked like a small ravine behind the motel. No light came from outside. I showered, turned on the small TV for background noise, and collapsed into bed. I must have dozed off around 12:30. The first tap came about 20 minutes later. A soft, rhythmic knock, like fingernails on glass. I froze. The sound came again. 3 knocks this time. Then silence. I remembered the manager's warning and decided it had to be tree branches or maybe some loose gutter in the wind. I rolled over, pulling the blanket to my chin. Then came the voice. Hey. It was faint. Almost like it came from the TV, but I'd muted it before falling asleep. Hey, can you let me in? The sound was muffled, close. My heart thudded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I sat up, staring at the closed curtains. The voice was clearer now. And it was my voice. I'm freezing out here, it said. Please. Every part of me screamed to ignore it, but curiosity is cruel. I got out of bed, the floor cold under my feet, and stood about 3 feet from the window. The air near the curtains felt different, staler, heavier. The knocking started again, a slow, deliberate rhythm that didn't match the trembling in my hands. Don't you remember? My voice whispered. You left me out here. That's when something inside me shifted. I knew I hadn't been outside. I knew that wasn't possible. But hearing my own tone, my own inflection, it felt too real to dismiss. I reached out. My fingers hovered just inches from the curtain then. A shape moved on the other side. A shadow, tall and still, its outline distorted as if pressed against the glass. I stumbled backward, knocking over the lamp. The bulb burst, plunging the room into darkness except for the dim TV glow. The voice grew louder, urgent. Let me in. It's cold. You promised. I ran to the door, hand shaking on the knob, but the moment I touched it, I heard the same words echo from the hallway, distant but identical. Let me in. It's cold. There were 2 of them now. The tapping turned to pounding. The curtain rippled slightly, as if something was breathing on it from the other side. I thought about calling the front desk, but the phone line was dead. In desperation, I yelled, "Who are you?" The pounding stopped. Silence. Then a whisper, closer than before, right behind the curtain. You know who I am. That was it. I grabbed my keys, bolted out the door, and ran to the front office. The hallway lights flickered as I passed, the air thick with the faint sound of tapping from every window I ran by. When I burst into the lobby, the manager was waiting, already standing by the door as if he'd been expecting me. He didn't look surprised. Just tired. "You opened them, didn't you?" he asked. "I didn't, I swear I didn't," I said, shaking. Something was there, it sounded like me. He sighed, rubbing his temple. "They always sound like you. That's how they get in." I left before dawn, didn't even ask for a refund. When I looked back in the rearview mirror, the motel sign was dark, as if it had never been lit at all. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I still hear it, the soft tapping on glass. Always 3 knocks. Always followed by a voice that sounds too familiar. I never open the curtains anymore. When the clerk handed me the key to room 9, I thought nothing of it, until I realized room 9 didn't exist on the Motel's map. It was supposed to be a quick stop. Just one night between cities, a place to crash before finishing the drive home. I pulled into the D-Cedar Rest Motel sometime after midnight, exhausted from 10 hours on the road. The place looked old but well kept. Rows of single-story rooms lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. A small office with blinds drawn tight. The man behind the counter was middle-aged, pale, polite in that robotic way people get when they've repeated the same lines for years. I told him I needed a room for the night, nothing fancy. He checked his computer, nodded, and said, "You're in room 9. He handed me a tarnished brass key with a chipped red tag. No credit card swipe, no ID check, just a small smile and a mumbled, "Checkouts at 11. The layout map pinned behind the counter caught my eye as I turned to leave. Rows of numbered rooms, 1 through 8 on the left side of the lot, 10 through 15 on the right. But no 9. I hesitated, almost asked, but fatigue won. I just wanted sleep. I found the door between rooms 8 and 10, an unmarked space, narrow, recessed deeper than the others. The number flickering was hand-painted, faded to a dark brown. For a second, I thought I smelled something strange, like damp concrete or old wood left out in the rain. Inside, the room was colder than I expected. The air felt heavier, like a basement or a space that hadn't been opened in years. The wallpaper was peeling at the corners, the carpet stiff with age. A single bulb flickered weakly above the bed, casting an uneven yellow light. But what bothered me most was the silence. It wasn't just quiet, it was vacant. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring like sound itself didn't want to exist there. I tossed my bag on the bed, took a quick shower, and tried to ignore the feeling that the walls were closer than they should be. When I lay down, I realized something else. The hum of the motel's neon sign, which I'd seen buzzing outside, didn't reach this room. No air conditioning rumble, no pipes groaning through the walls, no sound at all. I drifted in and out of sleep, uneasy. Sometime past 2, I woke to a faint scratching. It came from behind the wall near the headboard. Slow, dragging, like something small trying to get out. I sat up, held my breath. The sound stopped. I told myself it was a rat, maybe even the pipes shifting with temperature. But then 3 soft knocks came from inside the wall, not random. Steady. I froze. My phone was on the nightstand. I checked the time, 2:47 a.m. No signal, just no service blinking where the bar should be. The knocking came again. Then, a whisper. It wasn't clear, more like the faint trace of a voice moving through drywall. A breathy sound stretched thin by distance. I pressed my ear to the wall, heart pounding. This time I could make out words. "Let me out." I jerked back so fast I hit the nightstand. The lamp flickered, and for a split second I thought I saw movement in the wallpaper. A dark, slow ripple like something shifting beneath it. I bolted out of bed, grabbed my keys, and ran for the door. But when I stepped outside, the air felt wrong, cold, sharp, and damp, even though I'd checked in on a warm summer night. The parking lot looked different. The lights were dimmer, some flickering like candles about to die. The neon sign that had glowed, Cedar Rest Motel, was off, the tubes broken and dark. Still, the office light was on. I half-sprinted there, shaking. The same clerk was at the counter, head bent over a ledger. He looked up, startled. "Everything all right?" I slammed the key down. "That room, room 9, it's not on your map. Someone's inside the wall, I heard them. His expression went blank. Then slowly he said, "Sir, we don't have a room 9. I laughed nervously. "What? You literally gave me the key. Right there." I pointed toward the wall map behind him, but when I looked, there was no gap between rooms 8 and 10. They were right next to each other, perfectly aligned. He frowned. "You must be mistaken. Maybe you stopped somewhere else first?" I reached for my phone to show the photo ID taken of my car outside the door, but the camera roll skipped from room 8 to room 10. Nothing in between. No photo of room 9 at all. When I looked down, the key was gone. Just a faint smear of rust on the counter where it had been. The clerk stood up, uneasy now. "Sir, I think you should go. There's a motel about 20 miles west. Maybe you—" I didn't let him finish. I stormed outside, convinced he was playing some cruel joke. But the space between rooms 8 and 10 was just solid wall. Fresh paint, no door, no window, nothing. I got in my car and drove until the sun came up, my hands shaking the whole time. I didn't stop until I reached a diner off the highway. The waitress noticed my state and asked if I was okay. I told her where I'd stayed. She froze mid-pour. "You mean Cedar Rest?" she asked softly. "Yeah." She hesitated, lowering the pot. "That place burned down in the 90s. Nobody stayed there in decades." I laughed it off at first until she pulled out her phone and showed me an article. Black and white photo. "Fire consumes Cedar Rest Motel. 9 confirmed dead." 9. The screen blurred in my hands. I zoomed in on the picture. Even though it was grainy, I could make out the burned structure, the exact room layout. And right in the center, where the fire had started, was a charred door marked 9. That was 3 months ago. Sometimes when I'm driving at night, my GPS glitches and reroutes me down a road I've never taken before. The name always changes, but when I look ahead, I can see a faint red glow through the trees. A neon sign, flickering. And every time I hear a voice whisper from the back seat, "Room 9 is waiting."